God bless you. It is your coach, it is your colleague, it is your revivalist, it is your friend, Dr. Brenda Bowers. And guess what? This is the last day of the virtual revival. Oh my goodness. We are completing the last day of week 7 of our virtual revival. I cannot thank you enough for sharing the seconds with me that you have. So let me hop into what we're going to do today on this last day and then tell you what to expect in the very near future. It's our last day because we're at Tuesday Testaments, April 7th. We are at that negative day 7 that you may be counting up or down to. And I'm going to let you know how many solidarity seconds. We've been cutting them pretty short for us. We are past day 47, even if we're only counting to 40. This would be day 49 or 44 or 42, depending on how you have included or excluded Sundays. But we have been rocking and rolling and jimming and jamming. And I hope that you have had as much fun as I have. We have engaged in our solidarity seconds, and that's not going away. As I continue to do various posts, I want you to please share shamelessly the concept of solidarity seconds. And I'm just asking you to give credit where credit is due and give me credit for giving you a strategy that God gave me from his kingdom. I appreciate you so much. But wow, look at what has happened globally just since we started way back now in February, and things that continue to unveil themselves in these last and evil days, and they are. But even in these days, we still have joy. You know why? Because we're going to do exactly what Jesus did, and we're going to go down, but we're going to get up. We done passed over, and we done crossed over, and we done resurrected, and all kinds of great stuff has been going on, much of which has come to provoke us to taking our own lives or taking the lives of others or sitting depressed, oppressed, suppressed, and even in some cases possessed. But I want you to know that I speak life into you right now. Liberty, I speak into you what you have spoken into others in your solidarity seconds, whether that is united around global peace, prosperity, the pursuit of happiness, liberty, and justice for just us all, and you know who all means for me. All means all creation, because even as humans, if we don't have the rest of what God created, we ain't gonna make it without these elements. So we have to be respectful of people, places, and things that have been created. Because if anything that is made wasn't made, then it wasn't made by God. If it is made, then it was made by Him. And now, how we choose to use those things, according to our non-synoptic gospel writer in his first chapter, are on us. But please, for every 1 minute of any post, whenever I come to you on any platform, I'm asking you to please, if you're going to honor the legacy, and if you care about me the way that I do you, then let us please continue to stand in solidarity just 1 second for every 1 minute that I am present before you. And what is solidarity? It is symbiotic oneness, like-minded indivisibility, deliberate alignment, respecting individuality, travailing yearns. And we just know that we just keep on doing it, because as long as we stay symbiotic oneness, as long as we are like-minded, as long as we remain indivisible, as long as we are deliberate, as long as we align, as long as we respect individuality, and no matter how much we travail and yearn, we will succeed because of the power of solidarity. So today is Tuesday Testaments. That's how we end every week, right? Our Wednesday to Tuesday week. So this is our last Tuesday Testament because this is our last day. And we are looking today beyond the four Gospels. Bright Easter week. We've talked about that on yesterday. Today is April 7th, 2026, where I am right now. And because this is our last virtual revival session, let me make sure that today I do start the clock properly so that you know exactly how many solidarity seconds I'm asking for. And also, where we are in Passover. Passover does not end until nightfall on the ninth, and today is the seventh. So Passover does still have 2 full days. So we want to honor that as we celebrate our Jewish brothers and sisters, and especially in this wartime zone that we're in. Let us remain in the kingdom time zone. Now I'm getting ready to start the clock on our solidarity seconds. We are still going to commune together in solidarity. So whatever elements you're going to use when we do that, I have them right here. Lord, bless our elements. You know what people are going to partake of the body that was broken for us. Thank you. And help us to do as you did for us, that even when the enemy comes and thinks he can kill us, that he will find that we have died in you already. And because of that, we are risen with you. So thank you. And we bless it. We take out anything that would be an offense to you. And we speak, God, that only blessings would be returned to us and to each other in your name. Amen. So here's what I'm going to talk about today. I just started the seconds. Remember yesterday, I told you I would come back and circle around liturgy, the liturgical, the work of the people, the calendar. So just looking at how we count the days, times, and seasons. So I talked to you about the time that we're in right now, which is Easter. So if you see here, kind of about that 12:30-ish to my right, where you see Advent, and we did that, right? If you have been following me during the holiday season, and then you see Christmas, and then you see Epiphany, and then you see Lent. So you see that time that we were in, that purple time. And then you see this sliver of red, which is called Holy Week. And that's what we just got out of. And now we're in this liturgical season that is called Easter. And the Easter season actually lasts for 50 days, starting on Resurrection Sunday. And we're at Tuesday now. So this would be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Day 3, meaning we would have 47 left before we get to Pentecost. But even though it's 50 days, which means there's 47 left, that also lets us know that when we're doing our count up to the ascension, which is 40 days, and then Pentecost is 10 days after that, then we're 37 days away from Ascension Sunday, which is actually always in Christian tradition celebrated on a Thursday. So Ascension Thursday, and then that starts Pentecost, the actual Pentecost Sunday, which we know is going to be May 24th. So between now and Pentecost Sunday, this is when we need to be doing baptism, evangelism, discipleship, youth conferences, um, formations. This is when we should be doing our pilgrimages, whether virtual or face to face. This is really that time of us engaging into the Great Commission, starting in Jerusalem or home, wherever home is for you, and then spreading abroad. So start tracking what you're doing. And I'm speaking now to my fivefold ministry leaders and the lay leaders and laity as you're engaging in things. Make sure that you're doing things that are building up the kingdom during this very sacred time. Because then, do you know that once we get to Pentecost Sunday, that is the longest period of time, the time after Pentecost, we get to go out here and do the Great Commission between May until we get to Advent. So we are given a long period of time that's called ordinary time when we look at the Christian year. But what we really should be doing in that green time is planting and bringing forth fruit, more fruit, and much fruit. So that is the liturgical calendar. And I put the resource up there, and I've been talking, share shamelessly, but give credit appropriately. Now, today, what I'm going to do you see all these references I have up here? What I'm going to do for our last day together in the virtual revival. How do we count thee? Well, let me count the ways. So here, and I don't even think that first word in my headlines. Y'all know I do. I'm the headline queen, but I love. How do we crucify thee? That's what I said. Okay, that's what I thought. I was like, what did I say? And I'm the one who came up with the headline. So my first headline is, how do we crucify thee? Let me count the ways. So today, you see these number of references I have right under the references. I do have just the where what the base reference is, and that is I've looked at 412 teens. I've done religious affections, got questions, a good go to the Sword Bear Wisdom Online, another good go to GCI, and Koinonia, another good one. We've gone to them, but the exact references I've used to address what we're going to talk about today, how do we crucify thee? Let me count the ways. Well, the day of Jesus' crucifixion, and I've alluded to this when we were going through our Passion Week and even throughout the entire 40-day virtual revival. But the day of Jesus' crucifixion is one that is debated among scholars and including among Christians. Even in Christianity, all Christians don't believe the same thing, believe it or not, with three primary views: a Wednesday, Thursday, and a Friday view of when the crucifixion of Christ actually occurred, based on different interpretations of biblical prophecies, Jewish time reckoning and reconciliation, and the number of Sabbaths during Passion Week, how many were actually occurring during Passion Week. And we talked a lot about that in different ways. But the central debate really revolves around Matthew 12 and 40, where Jesus states that he would be in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. So that gives us a Christological account of Jesus himself making a statement. And if we believe that the word confirms itself, then that means that we just have to study to show ourselves approved, because as work laborers in the gospel, we don't want to be ashamed. We want to rightfully divide the word of truth. And we don't want to be afraid to come and reason together, because we can. Let's talk about it and gain an understanding. We don't want to perish because of a lack of knowledge, but rather we want to get knowledge, and all are getting, we want to get understanding. And then when you learn how to marry knowledge and understanding, you get the chiefest thing. And the chiefest thing, according to King Solomon in the Proverbs, is wisdom. So I hope in the midst of all that, we're having fun just studying the word. So why does it even matter? How do we crucify thee? Let me count the ways and let me count the days. Why does it matter? Proponents of Wednesday, Thursday views argue that a literal interpretation strengthens the reliability of the word confirming itself against critics, while proponents of the Friday view argue that it honors ancient Jewish time reckoning and the historical traditions of the early church. So, when I have said to you, don't arm wrestle the when, let's just stay focused on the what, because we're going to get to the first day of the week, no matter what. But because this has probably been the number one question that has come up, I thought what a great way for us to end the virtual revival on. How do we crucify thee? Let me count the ways by counting the days. So, what does it look like when 72 is the view? So I'm going to go over the bullet points that we've been given by our resource experts, and then I'm going to show you some pictorials so you can look at what it visually would look like. So the Wednesday view. What does it look like when 72 is the view? So the Wednesday view, a 72-hour view, and all of these are from a compilation of the resources that I just gave you on the previous slide. The Wednesday view argues for a literal interpretation of 3 days and 3 nights, meaning 72 hours. And it requires a longer period of time in the tomb than the traditional weekend would allow for. So Jesus is crucified in this view on Wednesday, or Nisan 14, verses on Nisan 16. And if you've been following us on the Passover, you know what those numbers mean, that he would have been buried before sunset on the Jewish Thursday, and then he would have risen after sunset on Saturday, which would be the Jewish Sunday. So the key arguments for the 72 view, 72-hour view, it literally fulfills the prophecy in Matthew 12 and 40 if we're counting 72. It allows for there to be two Sabbaths, the special high Sabbath, which would have been on Thursday, and then the weekly normal Sabbath on Saturday. And we know that right now our Jewish brothers and sisters are dealing with the high Sabbath and also the regular Sabbath, and we talked about those. Advocates argue that this Wednesday view allows enough time for the women to have bought spices on Friday and rest on the weekly Sabbath on Saturday, not the high one. So, not on the high one on Thursday, but the regular one on Saturday. Therefore, they would have purchased the spices on Friday. Critics to this argument, the disciples on the road to Emmaus, what we covered yesterday on our Miracle Mondays, say that Sunday was a third day since the crucifixion, which some argue would suggest a later day. So I also am giving under each of these slides of the three views this other reference, which is a really nice reference at all, also that I have used, and it is the religionsaffections.org. And I do use them in the other, I referenced them and cited them on the slide before. The religionsaffections.org, I'm giving their view at the bottom of each slide of the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday view. So this first one, religionsaffections.org, says this view is almost entirely based on Matthew 12 and 40, which makes mention of 3 nights. This leads proponents to require 72 hours from Christ's death to his resurrection. A proponent is for onent, so someone who is for this view. Jesus enters Jerusalem on the Saturday or Nisan 10, because now we can count from that Nisan 14. If that was the Wednesday, we can count backwards to Nisan 10. We can count forward to getting our Nisan days in the Passover we're currently in, that is being celebrated. And then he's betrayed on the Tuesday and then crucified on Nisan 14, which would have been the Wednesday. Consequently, Jesus must have risen before 6 p.m. on Saturday, or else he ends up rising on the fourth day versus the third. So that's the critical view. And again, what I'm doing is offering you these three views. So when you hear people maybe arguing with you about your point, or when you're just challenging yourself, I want you to become confident in just looking at perspectives, but trusting God in us. Trust that our theanthropic Christ, once he said, I gotta go so another comforter can come, and he's gonna be in you. So go to that upper room and wait. You don't have to be afraid to talk about Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, because once I am in you, I will bear witness in you. So you can study to show yourself approved. You don't have to be ashamed, but most of all, what have we learned? You don't have to be afraid. Let your faith flourish and follow the flow, because faith does not fail. Now, if it's not Wednesday, there's another view. Some believe crucifixion happened on Thursday too. Yes. So here's a Thursday view. This view acts as a compromise between the literal Wednesday and the traditional Friday view. So Thursday, interesting, is kind of our compromise view by aiming to provide 3 full nights while maintaining a closer connection to Sunday morning. So the timeline of the Thursday view is that Jesus is crucified on Thursday, buried Thursday evening, and then rises Sunday morning. So arguments, it provides 3 nights, Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night. It fits the two Sabbath scenario, Friday as a high Sabbath and Saturday as a weekly Sabbath. It allows time for a silent Wednesday, events that seem too numerous for a Friday to Sunday timeline. Now, the critics of this review requires that this Thursday view requires interpreting 3 days and 3 nights to include parts of days rather than this 72-hour strict timeline through proponents, although proponents proclaim it still offers a more literal time than the Friday view does, the traditional view. So again, our religiousaffections.org, so you have a consistent um, thought leader view, if you will, the Thursday view. So same reference that I'm using, the consistency of the references for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday view, just giving a some congruency around a thought leader perspective versus embracing either of them. The Thursday view, according to religiousaffections.org, says this is similarly based on Matthew 12 and 40, stating that a Friday crucifixion has only 2 nights. So proponents suggest that Jesus entered Jerusalem on Sunday or Nisan 10, and the Last Supper was on Wednesday night, which then would allow Jesus to have been crucified on Thursday or Nisan 14. And the next day, Friday, was a Sabbath because it was the first day of unleavened bread, the day of preparation, which is said to be historically on a Thursday. It is claimed that people would have been resting on the Friday, and hence Thursday then becomes that day of preparation, and then in turn would have resulted in being the actual day of crucifixion to provide for a Sunday resurrection. So that's the Thursday view. Now, are you committed to tradition no matter what others say? If so, then let's get back on track and bring in Friday. So, the Friday view, which is considered the traditional view. This is a traditional view that is observed by most churches, hence aka Good Friday. So it argues that the days is an ancient idiom. So let me get that the 3 days is an ancient idiom that means any part of a 3 day calendar. So if any part of a day is a day, then that makes it suffice those of us who embrace a traditional view. If any portion of a day then is a day, then it's easier for us to count from Friday to Sunday as 3 days. So the timeline, if Jesus is crucified on Friday afternoon, buried before sunset, then which would be when Saturday began, right? Because we already know that the sunset, and we talked about the watches. So if the new day actually starts on 6 p.m. at night, which it does, then him being crucified on a Friday afternoon, buried before sunset, which would have then become Saturday, and then him rising on Sunday morning. So here's some of the arguments. Unanimous witnesses of early church tradition, Mark now 15 and 42, caused the day of preparation, which generally refers to the day before the weekly Sabbath. And if that was Friday, then the Jewish timekeeping or the Talmudic states that a part of a day is as the whole of it, which would make Friday, Saturday, and Sunday meet the 3 days requirement because we can use any part of the day as a day. So critics argue that it's difficult to find 3 nights, no matter how you count, between the Friday evening and the Sunday morning. So for congruency's sake, our religiousaffections.org reference the Friday view. In this view, Christ celebrated the supper on Thursday night. This was likely the Galilean Passover, which was celebrated a day earlier than the Judean, or what, remember what we found out about Judas, our one actual from the tribe of Judah apostle, then would have celebrated the uh, supper, as they're saying it, on Thursday night, the Galilean Passover, versus the Wednesday night. which may have also been an angst with Judas of Iscariot. He was tried in the early hours of Friday. He entered Jerusalem on the Monday or Nisan 10, which had begun at Sunday 6 p.m., and was crucified on Friday, Nisan 15, by Galilean reckoning, Nisan 14 by Judean reckoning. So that would reconcile all 12 apostles, the day of preparation. He was laid in the tomb on the same day and was in the tomb all day on the Sabbath. And then the women who came to the tomb came early on the first day of the week, which would have been Sunday, which would have been the same as on which he rose. So when we look at all three accounts, then we end up with this: was it Wednesday? Was it Thursday? Was it Friday? You know, how can we crucify thee? Let us count the ways and let us count the days. So I hope that gives you a good perspective of why you may hear these different views. So it is absolutely all in the count, right? I've told you it's all in the count and all in the cut. It's all in the covenant, that's the cut, and all in the contract, that's in the count. So it depends on if you're contractually committed to Galilean, Judean, Jewish broad, Christianity broad. None of them logically. Let's count the moons, let's count the stars. If you're committed to the lunar, if you're committed to the solar, if you're committed to the solar lunar, all of that ends up changing the cut and the count. And once we do that, the adjustments that occur actually gets us all to a Sunday resurrection because it's in the count. Now, let me just show you what some of it looks like. This particular resource has a whole lot on it. So there is a QR code at the bottom, and was trying to, and I was looking here to give you a good reference, but it tells us this is from the Church of God, Seventh Day Teaching, that Jesus' entombment was a full 3 day and nights according to Scripture. Most other Christians teach that Christ was crucified on Saturday, rose on Sunday, according to the traditions of men. This is a very detailed, so for those of you who are very detailed and want to look at this, whether you want to screenshot this, I'm going to keep it up for a few minutes. I have just a few pictorials before we go into our community together solidarity celebration via our communion. So you see a note to my left. It says in Bible times, a day begins at the end at evening, sundown. So the night part occurs before the daylight part of each day. And this chart is based on that impart configuration. You see that Friday, which would have been what we are calling um, the week before Passion Week started, the week before Palm Sunday. You see Nisan 9, 10, then what we would have called Palm Sunday, Nisan 11, then we had 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, Resurrection. Then you see on Nisan 18. So as we look at this particular one, the reason I like this detailed one is it really helps you go through the options that I just went through with you. It lets you see, let's say on Friday, Nisan 9, the sixth day of the week, the preparation of the weekly Sabbath, if that's when Jesus went to Bethany, the triumphal entry, if that was on Nisan 10, the Sabbath, that would have been the day before Palm Sunday. Then, if the fig tree was cursed on Palm Sunday, and then the fig tree dried up on the day after Palm Sunday or the second day of Passion Week, Monday, upper room reserved Tuesday, Wednesday, Lord's Supper instituted, Wednesday night, Jesus crucified, Thursday, one night and one day in the tomb. Friday, Nisan 16, 2 nights, 2 days in the tomb. Women bought and prepared the spices to anoint the body. Nisan 17, then we see the night and day, Jesus 3 nights And 3 days in the tomb, women rested the Sabbath according to the commandment. Then it said Jesus had already been resurrected right at that before the first day of the week, right at that before sundown, which would have been the first day of the week, which then gets us to Nisan 18 or that Sunday. This would then, what I also like about this is that it shows us the today that we're in, right? Yesterday would have been Nisan 19, the day after Easter, and the day that we're in right now, Nisan 20, the third day of the week. And then tomorrow would have been how we had started this virtual revival from Wednesday to Tuesday, Nisan 21. So it gives you a lot of, the footnotes are really good. And if you just look at this particular duration of entombment, re, not committing, if you remain non-committal of saying, well, that means he had to have been fill in the blank. What this does do as a teaching aid is this is a really nice visual on just how to count, even from a Passover perspective, Nisan 9 all the way to Nisan 21. So it really gives us this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Literally a 2 week period to just look at calendaring to help in education around when is unleavened bread, when is preparing a Passover, paschal lamb, when is a Sabbath observed, when is a high Sabbath, when is a regular Sabbath. This particular pictorial is a good one just to study those things from a history perspective. And then, of course, don't be afraid to delve into where it's showing you Feast of the Unleavened Bread, called the Passover, Jesus in the tomb, based on scripture. And then don't be afraid to allow the word to confirm itself. Just keep reading, just keep studying. Don't be afraid of God's word. And don't be afraid of the comments that other people make about it. You have to know, as many Fish Fry Fridays as we have gone through now, you got to know how to eat fish by now and eat the meat and spit out the bones. That's how I was taught to eat fish, but I was trained to be a fisherwoman at a very young age. So you got to know how to clean and scale, but you still got to get the meat out of the fish and you got to know how to throw away the bones. And I'm giving you a lot of really good meat that you can use without having to reject something that you see because it doesn't fully align. So, what I'm providing you, I'm role modeling solidarity seconds for you right now. I'm saying find a piece in all of this that you can agree with, give it 100%, and then allow the Holy Spirit to give you enlightenment because studying is exactly that, right? It is exacting by getting the whole and then extracting that which allows us to be line upon line and precept upon precept. Why should we do that, Dr. Brenda? Because that's what the Sanhedrins would have done. Because that's what the apostles would have done. Because that's what we saw Jesus do. Because that's what we saw Abram do. That's what we saw Abraham do. Remember how he was just having those conversations with the Lord and wasn't afraid to ask God questions? Just getting comfortable with having conversations with God through His Word. It's an amazing thing and it's liberating all by itself. Now, this particular one, which comes from lifehopeandtruth.com, nice and colorful. And this gives us that 72-hour view, AD 31 is what this one is looking like. So now we start seeing that ain't nothing but a little half moon up there, but it's making a huge statement, isn't it? It's saying that we're talking about that Annos Domini 31, not 33. But here, the chronology of Christ's crucifixion and resurrection, when we look at Wednesday, not it, I wanted to say not as wordy, but it has a decent amount of words on this slide just because it has colors, right? But also using the Matthew 12:38 through 40 scripture. Wednesday, Passover and preparation day. Thursday, first day of unleavened bread, or that high day, high Sabbath. Friday, preparation day for the weekly Sabbath, because there would have been two. So, was the supper that Jesus prepared? Remember that question? Was it a Passover supper or was it just a new Monday? Was it just a new commandment? Well, here gives you an opportunity to say, oh, okay, well, either or, maybe both or neither. So Friday would have been that preparation day for the weekly Sabbath. Saturday would have been the weekly Sabbath, and then Sunday, the first day of the week. But this particular pictorial, what it is showing you, if you go to what is my far left, it shows Jesus eating that last Passover meal with the disciples. But if you look where the sun shines, kind of what I like about this, when you look to the left, you see the moon. When you look to the right, you see the sun because it is taking us from that kind of that first watch, which would be in the evening, all the way through the end of the day watches. So if you look at the Wednesday on the right where the sun is, and you look at one, two down, it says crucifixion begins at 9 a.m. according to Mark 15 and 25. Jesus sat on stake for 6 hours. He dies at 3 p.m. according to Matthew 27:46 through 50. And then Joseph of Arimathea asked for the body in Matthew 27:57 through 59. Jesus' body is wrapped and entombed before sunset, according to John 19:39 through 42. And actually, if we go back up where I said a crucifixion begins, it said Mark 15 and 25. So here we see three of our four gospel writers just in the sun part of Wednesday to substantiate a Wednesday crucifixion. Very interesting. We do get Luke's gospel here, but Luke doesn't show up in this particular pictorial until you get to the daylight, the sun shining on Friday, where it says Friday, and where the sun is shining on Friday, which says night two and day two. Women prepare spices and stop to rest on the weekly Sabbath, which is recorded in Luke 23 and 56. What I think is really interesting here is that we see all four gospels, but not necessarily all four aligned in each of the days. Let's pop over to Nisan 18 or Abib. We talked about that as well, 18. And if we look at that day again, sunshine side, we see Mark, we see John, and we see Luke. So when you look at the gospel writers, what I like about this slide is it shows you where they're at and it shows you the lack of congruency in time, but the congruency of the event. The end of the Matthew 12:40 prophecy, according to this document, this pictorial, this infogram, then ends on that sunshine side of Saturday. Now, what you also see interesting in this one is not a whole lot is happening at night, right? Except for the first night on Wednesday. That's where we see the Passover meal being eaten. That's where we see Jesus going to the garden to pray. That's where we see Judas Iscariot betraying Jesus. That's where we see Jesus being brought before the high priest on that night side of Nisan 14. The other thing we see at night is on Thursday, where the Jews observed their Passover 24 hours after Jesus did. And then the next thing we see something at night is early before sunrise, while still dark, the women came to the tomb and found it empty on that Sunday. So, just showing you how to utilize infograms to gain information in your study versus um, pushing you into any specific ideology. So, how many ways can you count to three? Well, the answer is it depends, right? So, the 72-hour timeline, this is another pictorial. This one was harder to find the actual source because Pinterest is where um, you find the pictorial, and when you click on it, the resource it takes you to is not the same as the actual info. So that's why this one, I have to just credit Pinterest where I saw it, but I like it because it's just kind of a quicker down and dirty of the 72-hour. Wednesday crucified at 3, buried before sunset, according to Matthew 27:40. Thursday, high day Sabbath as the high Sabbath, feast of unleavened bread as as recorded in John 19 and 31. Friday was the working day, the women buy the spices, as in Mark 16 and 1. Saturday would have been the regular weekly Sabbath, and where they would have been resting by commandment, as in Luke 23 and 56. And then resurrection, Saturday sunset would have been exactly 72 hours, and a Saturday sunset means it's actually Sunday. He is risen. And here, the other thing that I like about this quick down and dirty of the 72-hour biblical account, look, we got everybody. We got Matthew on Wednesday, we got Mark on Friday, we got Luke on Saturday, and we have John on Thursday. So you also see places where, even though we're looking at 3 days and 3 nights prophecy of Jesus's words in Matthew 12, we also get to see all four gospels represented in this 72-hour exacting time frame. This one again, colorful as it relates to the blues and the hues, but it also gives us a little more detailed information. Sacred calendar, days begin at sunset, Nisan 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So different days of where we're starting our Nisan count at. And here we see that day of preparation on Wednesday, Nisan 14, where it would have been the Passover meal, betrayed by Judas, and then Jesus crucified by 9 in the morning, dying around 3. So we're not having a whole lot of argument or dispute about the 9 and the 3 Jewish day hours. But then we also see that high Sabbath being on Thursday here, Jesus' body in the tomb. Then we see Friday, less things happening other than the women buying the spices. Saturday, considered Good Friday to Easter, only 1.5 days versus a full 72 hours is how this gives you that at a glance. And this is beyond today.tv. And you see actually a UCG.org booklet Easter rest story. And where it says Jesus said he would be in the tomb for 3 days and 3 nights, what is a biblically accurate chronology of Jesus Christ's crucifixion and resurrection? This timeline accommodates 3 full nights, 3 full daylight periods, and this is the only reckoning that fits Jesus's own prophecy of how long he would be in the tomb. It also fits perfectly with all the details recorded in all four gospel accounts. So you see, however you're going to look at the critical arguments of things, you can see how sure we can all emphasize how we want, but it's information. Do not be afraid of knowledge. Don't perish because of a lack of knowledge, and trust the Holy Ghost that is inside of you. Don't let the enemy that's in me be the one that destroys me from being able to rationally give consideration. Because what is the important thing? He died and he got up. So we're not gonna forget that, right? He died and he got up with all power in his hand. He got the keys of death and hell. And that's what matters. All of this is for us being able to say, how many ways can you count to three? So that when we are being so definitive and when we are being so show you right and ain't no other way but the highway, my way, or the highway, my foe, and no more. I'm just saying, well, maybe just study a little more and see what you think and what you find out. And it doesn't have to change anything other than a consideration that perspective and view does not have to be feared nor revered to the extent that we won't give consideration to the other perspectives. Because otherwise, we got to forget our Abraham, 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 right? Then we have to forget that the eyes have it. Then we have to forget that I, right? Then if we do that, now we can study Ramadan and not be afraid of being indoctrinated, or study Passover and not be afraid to be indoctrinated, or study Christianity and not be afraid to be indoctrinated, or give respect to those who say, because all this confusion, that's how come I don't believe nothing. Okay, but that's okay too. If we are willing to give 100% to our 1%, our 0.01%. Well, this one is kind of cool. It has a darker background, but what I like about this one, and it's by David Pawson, he doesn't give the website, but you can certainly find the name. and find the pictorial timeline of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. What I want to point out here that gives us something a little different is that it gives you on top in that brighter neon kind of green color, the Jewish calendar days versus the Roman calendar at the bottom in that little more of a fuchsia, and then Jesus in the gold in the middle. What I like about this particular view of how many ways can you count to three is both of these counts would have been happening. So you would have been having a Jewish calendar active and happening at the time of the crucifixion. You would have had the Roman calendar active and happening during the crucifixion. So Jesus was in the middle of them both, right? And we know that historically as we've studied. So this particular pictorial shows you what the Jewish calendar would have been that would have been being followed by those following the Jewish calendar, but also the Roman calendar and what that would have been and what they would have been following. So then we can get a reckoning and a reconciliation of, okay, well, since some people were following the Jewish calendar and some people following the Roman calendar, and we do know when Jesus was grieved and when he groaned and he said he was looking at Jerusalem, that his own disciples said it took 46 years to build this thing, 46 to 47, and you saying it's going to be towed down in 3 days? When they didn't realize he was talking about himself. But we do know historically in AD 70 that the Roman Empire did take over the temple city as Jesus prophesied. So, from a historic perspective, I like this one because it shows the fact that the religious and political powers that were in place. And then you start to see, okay, so some people were thinking this way, some people were thinking this way. And that's why we have divergence. That's why we have congruency, but that's also why we have incongruency. So I have done some research just to give you all some different perspective. I'd love to hear if you appreciated being able to see them and just showing them to you in different ways. As Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Just another way of seeing that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This one being demonstrative of showing us that the crucifixion would have happened on day one. This is at Thursday view, and it shows the Feast of the Unleavened Bread. So this one, again, just showing you some different things, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday on the top. On the bottom, fifth day, sixth day, seventh day, first day. And remember when I told you day one was also day eight. So what ended in a new beginning. And so then the new beginning of day eight turned into day one. I think this is the last one that I'm showing you. And this is Philadelphia Baptist Church. So I've shown you a Catholic depiction. I've shown you a Jewish depiction. I've shown you a Methodist depiction. And I'm showing you a Baptist depiction. So different, even within Christianity, I wanted to show you some different views of how, when we talk about the crucifixion, people may not preach about it as not being anything other than Friday. But when they teach about it, because remember, we do multiple things. We speak and we teach and we reach and we preach, right? So depending sometimes in the preaching, there may be only that Friday traditional view. But then in the teaching, I want you to know that once we really go and study and we're in Bible study or we're in whatever your teaching school is called, we look at like this one, modern day time scale, midnight to midnight, day and night. Here we see the blue would be your night and that yellow being your day. And here you see a Wednesday account from the Philadelphia Baptist Church teaching crucified. They had the crucifixion happening on Wednesday with a Thursday evening burial from Philadelphia Baptist Church. So I just want to show you some different things that just give score to when we say, how many ways can you count to three? Don't be so quick to say, well, what all Christians believe, because I've just shown you multiple Christians accounts that count differently, even though we get to the same resurrection. on Sunday. So that's what I got for you today on our last day of our virtual revival of our Lenten season, which actually would have ended on Saturday before Resurrection Sunday. But we have carried this out just like we've been doing from Wednesday to Tuesday. So this has been our Tuesday Testament. What do you do when you get beyond Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? Well, this is what you do. When you got Dr. Brenda, then she's gonna come back and show you, hey, I know we said all that and we've been committed to all of this, but now let me just give you some other information that might make you go, mm. I want to thank you for following the virtual revival from Lent, being more than cotton balls, to the Passover, crossover, resurrection, and crucifixion accounts, all of them from Wednesday to Friday. I appreciate you embracing God, and knowing that He got you right the first time. Our solidarity seconds remain intact because of each of you, and I want to thank you for that. In the future, I will address some of the questions that you have asked me to cover. I will offer you some courses that will be both some live, some pre-recorded that you will be able to purchase if you so desire. And if there's a particular content of expertise that you would like, you can reach out to me, DM me, and I will respond to you. And then there will be some other daily data posts that will vary just on my own unction, my availability, my time, what's going on in the world. Me showing up maybe with a 60 second to let you know that we are changing the world one solidarity second at a time, all 86,400 of them. And if you have enjoyed this virtual revival, I have not asked you for anything other than our solidarity seconds. But today, because you have asked, and it is mine to have to learn how to ask, I'm going to ask you if you would please consider supporting our work by donating. You can do a tax-deductible donation, your gift to our 501c3 arm, which is Seeds of Wisdom in New Ground, or sowing. That's why it's a word for you, sowing daily, because that is what we are doing. And I am very committed to planting seeds of wisdom in new ground constantly because God has a word for you, for us. And I'm asking Him to speak to us. You can support our work. I am a one-woman machine right now. There was a time that I wasn't. I had a full team. And then, y'all, I got to use your term. Then life started life. And for me, before that ended up being a cliche. But because God did it again over and over again, I done found out how you can count to three all kinds of different ways. And one of them is being able to be in the presence of Christ more than one time directly, and being in a position to where this miracle is before you. I haven't been talking about my testimony, but just before we end this live revival, I want you to know that I'm not even supposed to be here before you today. But God, that's what I can tell you. Resurrection power came into my life. So I'm asking you, if you would, as I continue to show back up because God raised me up, that as I thank you for being with me throughout my typos, throughout whatever the length, my platform, the things that have gone wrong, just I'm focused on the things that's going right. And you are right with what's going on. And I want to thank you for that. But to help me as I continue to move forward in the rebuilding process through Seeds of Wisdom in New Ground Incorporated. If you would like to support our efforts and our work, you can provide a tax-deductible gift in the four ways that I have below for you. And if you would like to engage our consultative arm, our C Corp, a Word for You Incorporated, you can feel free to invest that way as well. Our PayPal is our email for our PayPal account is a word for you 8@gmail.com. Our Cash App is $ at a word for you. Our Venmo is at Brenda Bowers, and our Zelle is 1-414-397-3663. So you have some QR code options here below on this slide. At any given time, your gift is appreciated and will be honored accordingly. Your partnership is very important to me, and your investment in the kingdom assignment, the one that God has given me and the one that He's given you. I believe our paths have crossed because of our dual citizenship. We are on this globe with a visa that's going to expire when our assignment is up, but that's obviously not right now. So as I support you and you support me, let us be joined together. I am your three-time international best-selling author. As I continue to work on even other works as we are going forward, I'm excited about remaining in partnership with you. And I want you to know that your gift is always received in gratitude and grace and with utmost integrity. And as always, it is only until soon. It's me, from me to you, from him through me to you, from you through me to him. We are being vertical and we are being horizontal because you know that worship vertical is from us to him, is how it goes this way, from him to us, how it comes down this way, and from us to us is how it goes horizontally. So in the cross, just remember that there's a place for you to look up and worship him, but there's also a place where he's looking down and giving grace and mercy to you. And then remember that the horizontal, a thief on the left, a thief on the right, is how we worship and minister to each other. So thank you for engaging that. I am Dr. Brenda Bowers, your host, your colleague, your friend, your revivalist, your fivefold ministry instructor, and the one who stands as a leader of leaders and as an humble servant to you as well. Thank you for participating in this virtual revival with me. And I am going to ask you for these 50 solidarity seconds as we end by communing together. Lord, we thank you. We have blessed it, and I thank you for these, your people. I thank you for this time. Let us break and eat, and together let us drink. Fun times, fun times, fun times. 50 solidarity seconds, but eternity is always only until soon. Agape and shalom. God bless you. We'll see you soon.